Morning on air. Our final conversation of the day looks at what is really a crisis in this country, and it's the high unemployment rate. I've already said that largely women and young people making up the highest numbers of unemployed people in the country. The figures, of course, in the latest Labour Quarterly Force survey, dropping the unemployment figures, that is, dropped to 32.6%. This is from 32.9%. So you just have a marginal decrease there in unemployment. Lethiwe Nkosi is a network mobiliser at Youth Capital. She's on the line. Lethiwe, good morning.
Good morning, Ken. Thank you for having me.
Duma Gqubele is an independent economist and a research associate at the Social Policy Initiative. Duma, good morning to you.
Thank you very much, Kathy.
Lethiwe, I'll kick it off with you. You know, every time we have figures such as the ones I've cited come out, we really seem to be stuck in a state of paralysis when it comes to the state of the economy, and in particular on the question of unemployment. In fact, many of the conversations we're having sound like a broken record because the issues remain the same, and there just does not seem to be much change in that regard. What is your own analysis of what is leading to this paralysis, Lethiwe? Why are we unable to break out of this cycle?
Thank you so much, Kathy. I think the first point that I'd like to make, and Duma may echo this view, is that the economy is not growing enough for jobs to be created. And so unless the economy grows and jobs can be created, then do we then anticipate significant change? So that's the first thing to say. But I think the second point, the second reason why we find ourselves in the state of paralysis, as you describe it, is that the opportunities that are created, the short-term opportunities that are created, need to be designed in such a way that young people and even women can get transferable skills. What we know as Youth Capital is that when employers ask for work experience when looking at young applicants for job opportunity, and many young people do not have the work experience. We also know that 8 in 10 young people have never worked, and so they really don't even stand a chance to apply for opportunities. However, the short-term employment opportunities, like for example, the teacher assistant opportunity that was first established in 2020, and the presidential employment stimulus that sought to provide young people with the work experience. And so we're saying such programs need to provide young people the transferable skills needed by employers. And when that can happen, maybe we will start to see a shift in the number of young people that find themselves locked out of opportunities.
Duma, let me get your own assessment of why it is that we are stuck in the state of paralysis.
Cannot continue this. What more evidence does the ANC need to admit that its macroeconomic failed to deliver jobs? I think for 20.
All right, Duma, we seem to be having an issue with our connection to you. We'll have to put you back up on a different line. I must apologize for that. Let's take a quick break. We're back with Duma Gqubele and Lethiwe Nkosi. 20 after 11 o'clock, we continue leading the conversation here on SAfm. We're focusing this hour on the unemployment rate and the fact that the situation simply is remaining the same. So I describe it as a state of paralysis when it comes to our inability to create jobs. And the people, of course, at the coalface of that happen to be women and young people. And of course, I don't have to state what would be the obvious, that it is in particular black women and black young people that are suffering the worst of this problem. Lethiwe Nkosi is with Youth Capital. We've heard from her already. Duma Gqubele is an independent economist, and he's also on the line. Duma, I trust that we have you up on a better line. Good morning again.
Your call has been placed on hold.
Good morning, Duma. All right. It's clear that he's having some connection issues. In the meantime, though, I'll continue with Lethiwe Nkosi of Youth Capital. Lethiwe, this issue of young people being able to be exposed to the job market and gain some kind of experience. I think just as we came out of the COVID-19 pandemic, the idea of giving young people job opportunities was a welcome idea. But one of the difficulties that we know about that is the fact that it is just so temporary. But those also seem to be the only opportunities that are available. They're not jobs, they're just opportunities.
Absolutely, and I think there's an opportunity with these opportunities for them to really be meaningful for young people. Earlier, I spoke about the short-term opportunities, providing young people with transferable skills that they can use in other sectors. When we look at, for example, when we look at the quarter labor force survey, we see a slight growth in terms of jobs being created in certain sectors like the construction sector. And so if young people who participate in short-term opportunities can get the necessary transferable skills that they can even use in a sector like the construction sector, working admin jobs, for example, then we'll be able to see a pipeline. So in essence, what I'm saying is that these short-term opportunities need to, one, provide young people transferable skills, but also there needs to be a pipeline that is created where a young person can see their journey, after completing the short-term program, then being able to access future opportunities. And the last thing I'd like to say about the value that needs to be tapped into when we look at these short-term opportunities is that these short-term opportunities can also give young people a chance to build strong social networks. As Youth Capital, we found that 6 in 10 individuals find a job because of the social networks, the connections that they have. And so when a young person is placed to do a short-term opportunity, they are exposed to a network that they can tap into, who can help them figure out what they can do post the program coming to an end.
All right, and when it comes to then the contributions, Lethiwe, of young people to these projects, do you think that enough of the research that you do, your experience working with young people, do you find that that is often onboarded?
So can you kind of rephrase the question?
So I'm talking now about from a governmental point of view. So the departments that are running these projects, whether at a national or provincial level, do they intentionally seek out the experiences of young people and how it is that they can improve these opportunities to also better suit what young people need in this current climate?
So, what we have found in our experiences with Capital is that there is a willingness to hear from young people. We've been in conversation, for example, with the Department of Basic Education, who played a big part in providing young people the opportunity to work as teacher assistants. So we've been in conversation with the department, and we see from them a willingness to hear from young people in terms of what can be done better. And some of the recommendations that we've put forward have actually been taken on board. So, for example, when the opportunity for young people to be teacher assistants started in 2020, after the first cohort of young people who were part of the initiative, we spoke to them and heard that young people are looking for training. Whilst working as teaching assistants, they'd like training in other skills other than the skills needed in the classroom. And we took that feedback to the department, and it was taken on board. So there's definitely a willingness to hear from young people from our experience as young people, as Youth Capital.
All right. Well, that's certainly encouraging. Duma, I hope it's going to be a third time lucky for us with you this morning. Good morning again.
Hi, Kathy. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. All right, that line is much better. So first, I'm going to give you an opportunity, Duma, just to reflect then on the state of paralysis of our country's economy where unemployment is concerned.
Okay, Kathy, first of all, I just want to say we cannot continue like this. For 29 years, the ANC hasn't got its head around how to grow the economy and create jobs. What more evidence does the ANC need to admit that its macroeconomic policies have failed to deliver jobs? They must apologize to the nation and admit what most South Africans know, that its economic policies are not working. So starting in the fourth quarter of 2008, there were 5.9 million unemployed South Africans. There was an unemployment rate of 28.7%. From then until the second quarter of 2023, 14 and a half years, the labor force grew by 7.5 million people, but the economy only created 1.6 million jobs, 11.7% of the total number of jobs of the people who were previously unemployed and the new entrants into the labor force. So what we see now, if you disaggregate these 1.6 million jobs that were created in 14 and a half years, 2.4 million went to older people, 35 to 64, and 800,000 young people lost their jobs in 14 and a half years. So my view is different. There are no jobs for young people. There are no jobs for the majority of South Africans. So I just find that the unemployment rate now is 42.1%. I do not use the official definition in anything that I ever say. There were unemployment rates of 46.6% for Africans, and 50.6% for African women. The youth unemployment rate was 70.2%. There are now 7 million young people who are unemployed and 9 million young people who are not in education, employment, and training. And this, Kathy, is how revolutions start. And I think as South Africans, as Lethiwe was saying, there is no solution. South Africans must understand the scale of the crisis. Getting 11.9 million people to work is equivalent of a war effort. According to my calculations, we need a GDP growth rate of 4.9% just to absorb my estimated 700,000 new entrants into the labor force every year until 2030, let alone 11.9 million unemployed people. So that's what I'm trying to say. So there's no single policy that will get us to full employment. We need multiple policies to address the multiple dimensions of the crisis. By definition, the policy tools to confront this crisis must be very large and then have an impact throughout the economy. So it's at the end of the day, it's a macroeconomic policy issue. It is not about projects. It is not about skills training. We have to get this economy growing faster. Yeah.
The unemployment rate, Duma, as you've explained, particularly among young people, I mean, it's jaw-dropping. We're looking at over 70% of young people in this country that are unemployed. What are the risks that you believe come with that, especially given the fact that in many ways, these are young people that would have been unemployed from the time that they left the schooling system, where they've had the opportunity to go to school, and may well likely spend a good part of their youth unemployed. How do we get those young people into jobs? Because these are the same young people who in the next 5, maybe 7 years may no longer be considered to be young, and therefore will, of course, not have priority when it comes to accessing some of the jobs or even opportunities that are available. I see that it's 11:30, so I'm going to take the news, and I'll give you an opportunity just to respond to my question to you, Duma, in a moment. It's 11:30 now, time for your latest headlines. All right, we continue the conversation on the talking point. We're looking at youth unemployment with Lethiwe Nkosi, who's a network mobilizer at Youth Capital, and Duma Gqubele, who's an independent economist and research associate at the Social Policy Initiative. So, Duma, you heard my question about the long-term risks of where young people today find themselves, many of whom, if we listen to the figures, 1 in 8 young people being unemployed will likely have been unemployed from the time they left school. And the current unemployment figures, of course, have been sitting at this high rate, for the last 5-7 years or so. I mean, it goes, we can look even beyond that. But the problem is that the scale of unemployment has been high for a long time.
Yes. So basically, as I said, this is how revolutions start. And one day before, Kathy, Well, the solution to this is we need a new macroeconomic policy framework that's got a minimum GDP growth target of 6%. Now, the problem we have is that National Treasury says it's not our job to grow the economy. They only care about debt. The Reserve Bank says it's not our job to grow the economy. We only care about inflation. Now, if the two most important institutions in our economy are not interested in growth, then who is responsible? I think it's completely absurd and that people believe that the Minister of Labour must sort out this crisis. He doesn't have the policy tools to address the crisis. The policy tools to address the crisis are at the macroeconomic policy level. It is the National Treasury and the Reserve Bank. So we need a non-negotiable GDP growth rate of 6%. That must be the first step in healing the trauma of our country's painful past. Without this target that will mobilize society, there's no future for South Africa, especially the young people. Everything we try to implement to address the crisis will fail. Every year we postpone making these bold decisions that are required to achieve the target will result in rising unemployment and make the crisis worse. So I can't understand the political parties, ANC, all of them. They don't really address this issue. This should be the only thing that we talk about as a country. Yeah.
All right. Let me go to Mpho, who's calling us from Limpopo. Mpho, good morning.
Good morning, Ketele.
I'm well, thank you.
I'm good, man. Nice to hear your voice again, SGTG. Okay, Kezi, I think one way or another, I'm a medical doctor. I have a MBB, CH, and also a physiotherapist. So I have 2 degrees and I'm still a youth. But I can assure you today that I don't know how to make panado from the scratch. But that's something that I'm prescribing to my patients every day. So I think the problem starts there to say, if we're still going to rely on government to give out jobs, then we're missing it out. Because youth, I believe the approach to this is to teach youth how to create stuff from the scratch, how to create jobs for themselves. Because that's where we need to support our youth, to start creating jobs, and in turn, they are going to be the ones who are employing each other. Why am I saying this? We have a practical example. I'm pretty sure when you drive through our freeways, the moment you pass a town or something, there will be people selling on the sideways. That's one of the practical examples. I was looking at some guys selling wood, and then I asked myself, how many chisanyamas, how many shops are buying this wood? But we're not subsidizing that to help those youth to say this is how you can make income from that. But instead we're saying apply, submit your CV, there is Hispanic, there is this one. But we are not teaching our youth how to create jobs themselves. And that's where the education system starts. As I'm telling you, I don't know how to make panado from scratch, but I'm a qualified doctor, I'm a qualified physiotherapist who is prescribing this thing every day. So I'm relying on government to give me that job. Even now, I'm not certain what's going to happen tomorrow because they never taught me how to start my own business at school. So I think the approach here is to say, let's teach our youth to say, how do you start something from scratch and how do you sustain whatever you're starting? And then government come in to subsidize, to support these structures. That's the only way to say we are going to win this, because we're not going to win. I like one of the speakers there have even gave us the proper definition of this unemployment. It's not that 30-something%. It can even be more than 50%. And this thing is painful when you have a relative who you know they are qualified, but they can't find jobs because they were taught to say the only way to survive in South Africa, go to school, finish school, get a certificate, have a proper CV, submit it to this office. That's the only way you will survive.
All right. Mpho, thanks for that call. Lethiwe, you as an organization that works with young people and creating, putting young people into job opportunities or even helping them find employment, Mpho's idea that it is young people themselves that need to, be finding ways of creating jobs. How plausible rather is that?
So yeah, the first point would be that as a campaign, we are not positioned to provide young people with jobs, but rather to just get insights from young people that help us with our campaigns as we advocate for solutions. And the solution that Paul mentioned around young people creating jobs themselves, we do think entrepreneurship is a viable route. However, we need to understand that, and Paul actually alluded to this, that many young people are not equipped to start their own businesses. They were not taught, even from when they were in school, on how to start a business. But also, many young people may not come from homes where they're exposed to the main elements of starting a business and actually keeping a business going. When we look at young people who sell food on the road, who are street vendors, they are being survivalists. So it's really just about making enough to put food on the table and not necessarily about running a business. And so what we say when we hear about entrepreneurship, we say that we cannot just lay that on young people without making sure that they are equipped to run businesses, but also we need to make sure that young people are supported in terms of having mentors who can guide them to become entrepreneurs. But one last thing to say, when we talk about entrepreneurship, we need to create a conducive environment where people can run their businesses. And I think this speaks to Duma's point about the policies that we have. We need policies that will create a conducive environment for young people to run their business, young people to access the market and actually grow their businesses if they do choose to pursue the entrepreneurial route.
Duma, do you have a particular view on
that?
I
disagree completely with Mpho. First of all, the unemployment rate in Limpopo is 48%. Now, you can't create jobs in an economy that is not growing. Please, South Africans, understand that. At the aggregate level, it might happen for one person, but for the whole country, it is impossible to create jobs if the economy is not growing fast enough. And as you've seen from the statistics I showed you, for the past 14 and a half years, we have destroyed jobs for young people, for the youth, because the economy has not grown fast enough. So, unfortunately, the only people who can make the economy grow faster, it starts with the government and implementing the right policies to grow the economy. Yeah.
All right. Sandile, you're in Pietermaritzburg. Good morning.
Good morning, Kate. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you, Sandile?
I'm afraid.
Yes, go for it, Sandile.
Yeah. In his stats that on the numbers he conveyed to us, unfortunately, I did not hear persons with disabilities. How many persons with disabilities are unemployed? But I can tell you, without having to listen to stats being made, there's a lot of us that are unemployed. Secondly, maybe he would just help us with clarifying how many or what is the percentage currently. Secondly, I want to also touch on these programs of government that are like the EAs or teacher assistants. If government wants to find youth being employed, there's something they are not absorbing. What they do is put people on contracts, and after that, they let them go without absorbing them. Even in internships, it's the same thing that happens. Worst of all, with learnerships, when it comes to persons with disabilities, there are learnerships which are outlined that a blind person like Fandile cannot participate in this one. I'm already 38 years, so I'm 3 years out of being a youth, and I have not been able to participate in meaningful employment. Yeah, thank you, Kate.
All right, Sandile, thanks for that perspective. Chaka, you're in Bloem. Good morning.
Morning, Kathy. Kathy, I agree with your guest. Our biggest problem is a flop of microeconomic policy. virtually no industrial policy. In fact, if we can sum it up, if you look at all the policies of the government, be it the social policy, whatever policy, they've all failed. I mean, government has flopped in all fronts. And there were talks now about with BRICS that we can imitate the Chinese model of growth. But the Chinese model of growth is a combination of free economic participation, plus a lot of state planning. Since the times of Mao Zedong, I mean, with the great part, they have been having those 10-year plans, whatever 15-year plans and so on, and they stuck to those plans, and they vigorously stuck to those plans without no compromise. And the basic the ingredient of those plans was infrastructure and planning the growth of the country. And China is ripping out piece of those planning that has been set forth since the time of. And the Chinese are committed and so on. Government has paid off. In our case, I don't see much from the government. I mean, there's basically it's a larger thing. Everyone does his own thing. Look at our public enterprises. I mean, 100% of our public enterprises bankrupt. They have to be bailed out by the state. And then there's no rigorous, the targets being set, managing those public enterprises to be productive and change messages to the economy.
Yeah.
How are we going to achieve the desired growth levels without rigorous planning and industrial policy, economic policy that encourages growth and so on?
All right.
Because in any case, 80% of I think about 80% of our budget goes towards loans. I mean, if a person assume an individual earns 1,000 rand a month, and then 800 rand goes towards the mashonisa, how will we be able to survive on 200? We're really on the same thing. We are in a vicious cycle.
All right.
Just getting deeper and deeper into this thing.
All right, Chaka. Thanks for calling in and for sharing that view. Duma, let me give you the first opportunity then to just respond and conclude. We're running a bit out of time, so if you can keep it short for me, please.
Okay, first of all, to the caller from KZN, Sandile. Sandile, I grew up in Pietermaritzburg, and I'm really sad to hear your story. When you look at the statistics South Africa figures, they don't release statistics based on the disability status. So I will ask Statistics South Africa if they can find a way of South Africans truly knowing the status of people that live with disabilities. And on Chaka in KZN, in Bloemfontein, I was looking at the analysis. Free State has destroyed jobs over the past 14 and a half years. So there's been no increase in jobs for 14 and a half years. And he's correct. In China, there's a mobilizing vision and plan. It starts with a 20-year vision and it's to double the size of the economy every decade. It's broken down into 5-year plans with annual targets, and each year they adjust the tools of economic policy to achieve the targets. And so we have an NDP which had a target to create 11 million jobs by 2030 and achieve 5.4% GDP growth. But nobody in government is responsible for achieving that target. So it's just pie in the sky to think we can emulate China or all the Asian countries when nobody in our government is responsible for achieving the NDP targets, which they themselves set here.
All right, Duma, thanks for that view. Lethiwe, your chance.
Thank you so much. I want to comment on Sandile, or rather just to depart from Sandile's point in Pietermaritzburg, particularly the point he made around public employment programs and the fact that they need to make sure young people don't stay without not having access to future opportunities. As Youth Capital, we are advocating for such programs to provide young people with the next steps. And that's why in our campaign that we're running now, #FundOurFutures, we are saying that the funding for such programs should continue to make sure that young people get the necessary experience and skills. And yes, the jobs may not be many once they complete the programs, but with having done the program, a young person will be able to have the necessary experience and skills when jobs are created. So anyone interested in learning more about the campaign that we're running, where we're calling for continued funding, you may reach Youth Capital on its WhatsApp line, which is 083 973 6642. I'll repeat, it's 083 973 6642. Thank you so much, Kathy, for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. Lethiwe Nkosi and Duma Gqubele there. It brings us to the end of the talking point for today. We're back with you again tomorrow, broadcasting from Sandton. That's where the BRICS Summit will be taking place. Up next is the book reading. It'll be followed by the update at noon.
Ladies